Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you happen to be watching this. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, I want to take a quick look at some logical fallacies. You can see this is part one, fallacies of emotional arguments. So, we're going to just do the riff on pathos, ethos, and logos. We're going to talk about emotional arguments, pathos. We're going to talk about logical arguments, logos, and we're going to talk about ethical arguments, ethos, and logical fallacies in each of those. This one, as it says, is fallacies of emotional arguments. The why bother is again from the student learning outcomes. Students will appropriately employ emotional, logical, and ethical appeals in argumentation. The idea is relatively simple. If you're committing a logical fallacy, you are not appropriately employing the emotional, the logical, or the ethical appeal. As always, the images were stolen from the webs. Unless otherwise indicated, the page numbers refer to Everything's an Argument with Readings, the 8th edition. This is not a formal paper, so be sure you cite your sources better than I did. And again, as always, this is not a monetized video. This is an effort to help my students who can't be in class get access to some of the material that I present in class. Start with some definitions. Fallacies are argumentative moves flawed by their nature, and they make principled argument more difficult. And so both the listener or the reader and the person making the argument are harmed because no communication, or at least good communication, cannot take place. Fallacies are common errors, they happen quite frequently, and they will undermine the logic of your argument. And if you keep reading from the Purdue University Online Writing Lab, they can be illegitimate arguments where people are deliberately trying to lead folks off the path, or they can just be irrelevant because there's not enough evidence to support the claim. And the goal here is in your writing, especially in the research paper, and I think in the connection paper to follow, can we avoid having arguments, that don't tie together? Can we avoid the risks, the common errors of logical fallacies? A few more definitions because why not? You lose credibility when you commit logical fallacies repeatedly. I think ever so often everybody tosses out a one liner and forgets that it's probably a logical fallacy. You need to be careful because the pathos, ethos, and logos, remember the ethos is the credibility. Your credibility as a writer is harmed with the logical fallacies, especially if they're repeated and especially if they seem to be intentional and egregious. Talked a couple days ago about this idea of reasoning, the idea of thinking logically, and because there are errors in reasoning, and because this is a class about reasoning and thinking logically, I think it's one of the important things that we should do, not only to uphold your credibility, but to make sure that we keep working on learning how to think properly, learning how to think clearly, and learning how to observe and move the thoughts forward so that everything is done in a logical, coherent, concise manner. Emotional arguments. That's what we're going to deal with first. And I think the idea of an emotional argument is to tug at your reader's heartstrings or to get their blood pressure raised, to scare the heck out of them so that they're, running a little bit afraid. Either way, I get upset. I don't want people to deliberately try to scare me when there's no reason to be scared. And I certainly don't want people to try to make me cry when there's no reason to be crying. So let's start looking at the first one, the scare tactics. Scare tactics have possible dangers, but they're going to be exaggerated beyond their statistical likelihood. It's known sometimes as an appeal to fear, and I think it's important to understand that they're all possible, but they're not necessarily probable. And if we started running around worrying about every possible fear, we would probably never leave the house. So, if 1/3 of all senior citizens will fall this year, one had better buy Life Connect. Because after all, we don't want Grandpa at the foot of the stairs saying he's fallen and he can't get up. Let's take a look at just a couple of things. Number one, I'm one of those 1/3 people. I've taken a couple of tumbles this year. I'm a senior citizen. I'm on the wrong side of 65. I have trouble bending and moving, but I was able to get up on my own both times. I didn't need Life Connect. I wasn't falling down the stairs. Sometimes stupid stuff happens. Not everybody needs Life Connect just because people are going to fall. And just because people are going to fall doesn't mean they're all going to be down at the bottom of the steps risking a concussion. At the other side, look, no one wants to be unpopular, excuse me. And no one wants to have bad breath. No one wants to be offensive. Listerine is basically just playing with that. The idea that you're going to run around having everybody hate you because your breath is bad is just their way to sell stuff. Just like I've fallen and I can't get up is a way to sell stuff. They're playing for fears of acceptance or lack thereof, and fears for grandpa and grandma having concussions at the bottom of the stairs. Obviously, there's FOMO, the fear of missing out. We could probably link that to the bandwagon fallacy, where everybody wants to do it. And it starts with just the basic idea this won't be around forever, so get it now. One of the ways you've all seen it is on Amazon. My sister-in-law wanted this book. It was a Christmas present. I ordered it for her. I don't remember how many were left in stock when I ordered it before Christmas, but a couple of days ago, and today's the 25th when I'm recording this, so let's say the 23rd, we only had one left in stock. They may have had one left in stock a month ago when I ordered it for Christmas. Somehow they just kind of keep repopulating, and all over the place on the web, you can kind of see this only one left, only 3 left. You have to buy it now. It won't be around forever. We also have this with the idea of things being available for a limited time. Coca-Cola is apparently going to be available only for a limited time. Or this version of Coca-Cola, limited time, and it's going to move on for good, so get yours now. You're going to miss out on this great creation of Coca-Cola, and the world's going to an end, apparently. Fear of missing out. There's also the either-or fallacy. That's the next one. It's an appeal to your emotions. You don't want to be wrong. So either-or fallacies reduce this complicated issues to 2 obscure legitimate alternatives, and only 2. The key here is we're taking a very, very big issue and saying there are only 2 options. Now, for some of you, the either or fallacy may have instances of being a legitimate option. For example, either you love bacon or you're wrong. That's probably not creating a false dilemma, but it is putting things in black and white. You either love bacon, putting you on the side of God and the angels, or you're wrong. It's a black and white thing. And because of that, I think it's important to understand that this is a logical fallacy that plays in the fear of people being on the wrong side, of people being wrong. And the fallacy ignores this idea that there should be more than two options. I think there always should be more than two options. It's never you're either for me or against me. A lot of times, I think people should understand that 80% agreement is good enough. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. A couple quick examples here. The America love it or leave it. When I was a kid growing up, during the Vietnam War, some of the people on the conservative end of the spectrum would tell people who were against the war, this is America, love it or leave it. Never mind the fact that the possibility of changing things is always there. Never mind the possibility of we can point out there are flaws, we can point out that there's a problem. It doesn't mean that you hate the country, and it doesn't mean that your only option should be leaving it. Especially if it's a democratic republic, there should always be the option of changing it. Would you rather do what you love or be stuck in a dead end job? I think there's a lot of people who have jobs that have a lot of things they don't like, but are making a crap ton of money. It's hardly a dead end job. And not every job has to be something that you love 100%. I mean, it's entirely possible that you're going to have a job where it's okay and it pays the bills, but the fact of the matter is, the other 16 hours of your life are pretty good. You're living in a town you like, you're living close to friends, you're living close to family, your spouse has a better job and makes a lot of money, and so you want to stay there. Your spouse has a job he or she loves. All of those things are options that say, look, you're not doing what you love necessarily, but you don't hate it either, and it's not a dead end job. It's an either or fallacy, and it's taking two options and saying these are the only two options. When people, when you guys were kids, go to bed or Santa Claus won't come. Now, the problem is, and I hate to break this to some of you, there's this option that there is no Santa Claus, that mom and dad actually ate the cookies and put the presents under the tree. And the fact is, mom and dad would have done that whether you went to bed or not. They would have just sent you outside to play and put them under the tree. All of those things are entirely, it's two options and they don't necessarily fit. And let me rephrase that. There's two options and there's probably a third or fourth. It's not a limit that you have to deal with. And of course, then there's a tagline. There are some things that money can't buy. For everything else, there's MasterCard. So apparently, we're just going to acquire everything we possibly can. If we can't do it with money, or if there are things that money can't buy, we're going to run around using MasterCard for all the things money can buy. Perhaps we should spend a little more time being happy with the things money can't buy. Again, there are more than two options. The slippery slope. The slippery slope argument sets up a tiny misstep will lead to complete and total disaster. It's probable that there's one step will lead to the next one, but each step that one goes down becomes more and more and more improbable. So, for example, I'm going to judge some debate tournaments this weekend. I may well hear something similar to this. If the government increases the funding of K 12 education, money will be diverted from defense. Perhaps it's possible, not probable, but possible. If money is diverted from defense, China will invade Taiwan and Russia will invade Europe, and the US will be forced to honor its treaty obligations. China has certainly been making threatening motions, over the past year or so towards Taiwan. Russia has invaded Ukraine. It's entirely possible they might have thought, had they got through Ukraine, they would have gone to another European country, one of the Baltic states perhaps. And the US does have treaty obligations to honor. How it honors them is going to be an open question. When the US enters the war, Russia and China and the US will use nuclear weapons, leading to a nuclear winter and the extinction of all human life. So, if we give K 12 education more money, we're going to destroy the world. It's going to be the end of the world as we know it. Step by step, each step becoming more improbable than the last. Slippery slope at its finest. And some of you have seen slippery slopes in a less extreme way. If you don't do your homework, you'll fail your classes. If you failed your classes, you won't get a good job. If you don't get a good job, you'll wind up homeless. And since this is January and everybody started the year with resolutions, if you don't work out today, you won't work out tomorrow. Eventually, you'll stop working out. If you stop working out entirely, you'll gain 150 pounds. If you gain 150 pounds, you'll have a heart attack before you're 45. This poor woman, because she stopped working out today, is going to have a heart attack before she's 45. The slippery slope begins with an improbable but possible situation and goes more and more improbable all the way through. Some of you, when you were little kids, maybe dealt with the slippery slope. If you give the mouse a cookie, he's going to want some milk. If you give him the milk, he's going to want something else. And if you give him something else, eventually the mouse is going to take over your house. It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope example some of you may have heard 1,000 times when you were kids. And I think it's important to think about the fact that the slippery slope is just kind of playing on fear. It's playing on a scare tactic. It's a combination of the 2 or 3 other logical fallacies. And it's one that we hear all the time. And it's one that we should call out all the time. There are overly sentimental appeals as well. The argument of what we should do with research, how we should do research, I could see the same argument about people who say, do you know what's in all of the vaccines? Why are you putting them in your child's body? Versus this one about research and this idea of how cruel can you be to the animals? Do you want the rat to live? Do you want her to live? Which is it? All of those are playing on the over sentimental appeal. They're trying to tug at your heartstrings. In the link, in the description box, you will find a link to this YouTube video. The YouTube video was Diet Coke. And the Diet Coke video, and I'll play the video in class, but the Diet Coke video was set up where Mama was sending shockwaves through the neighborhoods without saying a word. She had a handmade costume. She invented a ride share. She didn't need a dating app. You copied her jeans, your scrunchie, and she could win the argument with 4 words because I said so. They're playing on this idea of your mom was great. Your mom was a wonderful human being. And your mom drank Diet Coke. You should drink Diet Coke. Do what your mom did. Mom was wonderful. Can I bring some tears to your eyes and can I sell you Diet Coke? It's an over sentimental appeal. It's trying to get you to feel the sense of nostalgia that may or may not apply to your life. There's the bandwagon appeal. And in the bandwagon appeal, it's the real simple one. Everybody's doing it. We want to follow the same path everyone else is doing. It's sometimes called an appeal to the masses because everyone thinks this, everyone believes this, everyone's doing this. You used this as kids when you were talking to your parents. You were saying, everybody's doing it. I don't want to be left out. A lot of times, we don't need it. We're just going to buy it. And there are some simple examples. McDonald's wants you to show up because billions and billions have been served. If billions and billions have eaten there, it's got to be good. Pepsi is the choice of a new generation. And because it's the choice of the new generation, you don't want to be part of the old generation. God forbid you be a boomer. And for those of you who remember the movie Mean Girls, everybody's doing it, especially Katie Heron. And on the note that we should probably not all buy army pants and flip flops, I think we'll wrap it up here. Throughout the semester, I'll try to hit the ethical appeals and the logical appeals that fall into the logical fallacies realm. Hope all of you have a good day. Hope to see you in class next class period.